more like weapons and supplies. But you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the web page, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in that mine shot full of no's. It's TNT, TNT Beyond, yeah, TNT, TNT Beyond. You got your stats, you got your swords, and you got your invisible wall. It's TNT, TNT Beyond.
Hello everyone, I am Adam Bradford, the product director for D&D Beyond, and thanks for joining me this week yet again for another dev update and community Q&A session. We've got some really fun stuff to show today, a couple of new things. We've got an exciting data update, so let's jump right into what today's lineup is. So, what's going on? Latest news and development progress. What is in progress right now, what's upcoming. We're going to take a very, very early peek at something I mentioned last week, which is an interactive map kind of process that we're getting into, something that we're trying to conceptualize that I think is going to really revolutionize the way that we can play with adventures, especially. But going to take a really brief, quick look at that. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the public roadmap that we've shared, because we've gotten a lot of questions about what does this actually mean? What does this other thing mean? And the honest truth is I haven't had enough time to go in there and fill in a whole lot of written detail, but I'm going to walk through some of that using my voice. It's a little bit quicker than typing. So we're going to do that today. And then we're going to provide a classes and races update. We haven't done that since April, I think, is the last time that we did that. So it's been a little while. We're going to take a look at what's going on there, see if anything has changed since the last time we looked at the active characters distribution for classes and races. We're going to go through a few of my favorite things. So that is actually going to be a series of questions that people ask very regularly that we don't typically have a lot of time for, but I want to dive into that a little bit this week. Things like, what is your favorite class, favorite race, that kind of stuff we're going to get into during that little small section. And then we're going to have the Q&A time. And upon someone's brilliant suggestion, we are going to try to, whose line is it anyway, that section today. And I'm going to answer questions only with questions. If I don't, chat, you can buzz me or whatever Drew Carey used to do on that show. So we're gonna try all that out today and see how it goes. Okay. So first of all, latest updates. We've got a new product out tomorrow, Tactical Maps Reincarnated. It's going to be $14.99. If you buy an individual map, it's going to be $1.99. This is a really, really interesting product. You can see with the image here, this is an example. These are super high resolution maps. There are 20 maps inside the pack. And so actually, let's see. I think I'm going to actually come in here and check. Wait, stop it. All right, so I'm going to come in here and look at a few of these. This was unplanned, so we're going to see how this goes. But we're going to look at a few of these. So, Tactical Maps Reincarnated. All right. So, I think here we have, let's go with the final JPEG files. This is what we'll get into. So, wait a minute. Let's try, doesn't this do? There we go. There we go. So, we're going to let you see a little bit of this, but all kinds of really, really, oh, come on. Why is it opening in Photoshop? Photoshop wants to just rule the world. Stop it, Photoshop. All right, we're going to, let's see, open with, let's see if I can figure this out. We're doing it live. Photos. I think this is going to work. All right, so we got photos. So here is a look at the maps that are going to be coming in this pack. There are some really, really great additions to your game. That looks like it is very drow oriented. This one, I remember this one from long ago too. Really great. Now this product is called Reincarnated, and there is a reason for that. So these have been published before, but this is the first time that you're going to see them packaged, in this way, printed this way, and then especially available in this high of resolution as a digital image. So yeah, lots of good. Ooh, I like this one. This one's good. See, I just had about 10 encounters kind of roll off right there when I was looking at this one. And then we got, oh, this is beautiful. So this is by Jason Engel. Very nicely done. So yeah, all these maps are going to be available starting, I guess it would be midnight tonight, midnight Eastern tonight. So you guys can check out the marketplace at that point and grab these in ultra high resolution. I thought I was done, but they just keep coming. All right. Whoa, that one looked very wild. All right, so I think we finally reached the end. But yeah, you guys can check those out starting tonight at midnight. I keep looking at the other camera that I have in here because that's what I'm used to. But now I'm doing it at this camera right here because Firefox and Chrome decided to do these weird updates and nobody knows how to get the fancy camera working yet. So we're going to work on that. We're going to figure it out. All right. As we shared last week, the D&D Beyond Discord server is currently live. So you can get into the server by going to dndbeyond.com/discord or ddb.ac/discord. And we had some questions throughout the week that we collected there that I'm going to get to when that time comes in Discord. But join the conversation there. We've got 1,000 people over there starting to chat it up. So sometimes members of the staff are dropping in and talking with the community. You guys join us there. It's going to be quite the shindig over time. Dark Vision stacking issue fix. So I wanted to call this one out because we've seen a few issues come up in the recent weeks on this one in particular. But the majority of the use cases where we have issues with stacking of dark vision between goggles of night and some kind of racial dark vision, those should be addressed as of now. So a deploy went out for those, I believe, late yesterday. Everything should be fixed for at least 80% of the use cases out there. We do have some edge cases still that we are going to have to do a little bit more development for. The good news is that development's going to open us up for some other opportunities down the road, but we're going to have to put some systems in place to handle things like umbral sight for the Gloomstalker and the way that it conditionally gives you additional dark vision, that kind of thing. But that will be happening in the coming weeks. But to let you guys know, we have started to address some of the dark vision stacking issues out there. In progress and upcoming, no changes since last week, because again, a lot of these things are very big ticket items. I hope that I'm going to be able to show off some mega menus to you very, very soon. Challenges is going. We've got some more wireframing going on here. We're starting to get into the high resolution mocking up of some of those elements, and development is continuing. And then I saw some additional updates for the character sheet in the mobile app even this morning. So again, things are starting to come together there. The teams are working very hard, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of sneak peeks that we can get to in the coming weeks here. After that, the things that are kind of next for the teams, we've got content management we are going to be working on. We've got all the high fidelity mocks in place. All the design is in a good place with that, ready for the team when the developers get to move to that. My characters page updates, AL validation, was talking with the Wizards of the Coast team this week in Seattle. and we were talking about 2019, and we always end up talking about 2021 and way down the road. Also, lots of excitement coming for D&D in general and D&D Beyond. But AL validation is one of those things that we really talked about. And one of the things I was excited to hear is that because of the things that D&D Beyond can do for the Adventurers League, especially when it comes to convenience and automation, it is, we're going to be working together with the D&D team to hopefully, really bring about some changes for the AL that are going to increase the ease of play and helping that program, become even more than it is today, which is really, really exciting. So we're going to be partnering on that quite a bit as we go through this year. So we'll see the first steps of that start to come together before too much longer. And then, as I mentioned, interactive maps. So let's see. Let's get into an interactive map. All right. We've got this somewhere. I think it's on my desktop somewhere. All right. Where did I put it? Wait a minute. Oh, no. Oh, no. I've lost it. No interactive map demo today. I'm joking. We'll figure it out. All right. Let's see. Oh, my goodness. There's got to be something. All right. Will, just in case I have super mega ultra secrets, let's make sure that we can't see my desktop right now. All right. So, there we go. All right. What did I call that file? Oh, here it is. It's called map demo. That makes a lot of sense. All right. We can come back to the desktop now. All right. Again, this is, and of course it opened in the tab that's way over here on the 5th monitor. Okay, so this is incredibly early stuff, but to give you a little bit of an idea, we are going to start getting into filling in maps and making them a little interactive, a la something like Google Maps. So basically, you'll be able to have waypoints. Now this would function for this would also function for an adventure map, for instance. So if you have waypoints such as just keys for rooms A1, A2, A3, that sort of thing, you could do that. But you're going to be able to access information depending on what you're clicking on. This is just sample stuff that's starting to come together. What's the population distribution of the city of Waterdeep? You can see sources from there. So that's going to allow you to navigate back and forth. You can dive deeper into Waterdeep itself. So all of this is going to start coming together in the coming months. But this is the idea, is you would be able to go to a map within an adventure, and in that map, you would be able to jump around and see relevant information based on what's going on for that particular key location. So again, if you're in room A3, you click, you open, you have all the information about A3 right there. It's going to tell you everything that you need to know. There's not going to be as much jumping back and forth from map to text in the compendium. So we're really, really excited about that. I think it's going to be really amazing functionality. And then again, once we get to a point where we have the Sword Coast here and all these cities that we're starting to get maps for, the idea is hopefully eventually you'll see something start to come together that is akin to being able to go to Google Earth and start looking around. Now, clearly, we don't have this filled in as much as we do our real Earth, but we're going to do the best that we can with what we have for the maps and the cartography that exist for the Forgotten Realms in this case. And of course, we'll see if we can apply that to other settings as they come. All right, let's see. So then let's talk about, actually, I want to make you wait on the data just a second too. I said that I wanted to deep dive on the roadmap a little bit. So that's what we're going to do now. So the encounter builder, and this is how I would like to do this. If Lauren can help me out a little bit in chat there. We are going to get some of the, some of the questions as I'm on any of these particular features feel free to ask questions about that feature. And then Lauren, if you can try to pass those on to me, that would be a little more helpful, just kind of in general, than being able to do this. So let's see. All right, here we go. Encounter Builder. I think you guys are starting to understand what we're going to do with this a little bit more. I can tell you that we are going to be building encounters. We're going to be able to view encounters after they have been built. And then I can tell you that we are going to have at least the starting point of how you can run an encounter. So all of those are part of the scope of what's going on with this encounter builder. I can tell you that you're going to be able to kind of add summary text for encounters. You're going to be able to describe what's going on in an encounter. There is also the strong possibility, well, it is going to happen, but it depends on where it lands exactly in the timing. But you'll be able to attribute treasure parcels to an encounter. So I think you guys probably understand where we're headed at for the encounter builder, at least at a high level. Mega menus, I've shown that off a little bit before. That is relatively straightforward, but it's just easier to get around on the website. The mobile beta character sheet, I think everybody knows what would be in store for that. So I'm not going to spend too much time there. But if there are questions, I'll certainly get into those here. Let's see. Okay, we do have one from Ethnic Elvis asked, is there a player side interface to the encounter builder? So there would be a player interface from the perspective that a player could go and view what that encounter is. Now, over time, that would be accessible only via content sharing within the campaign, but you will be able to see what's going on in an encounter, even though you won't be able to edit some of the things unless you were the creator of that thing. Renderance plays. Will the saving of encounters be a local thing, or will you be saving it on your server? I am not sure what the pronoun usage is there necessarily, like when you're saying your. So I'm assuming that you're asking if it is being saved locally on your system. It definitely is not doing that, just like any other homebrew or custom element that's going on with D&D Beyond. It's being saved online. So you will see the encounters online. You can, by default, have those as private. So they're going to be available to you and the people in your campaigns. But then you could choose to share those encounters publicly. At least over time, you'll be able to do that. And then people can choose those encounters and start using them in their own games at home. So just like other homebrew elements, encounters are going to operate that same way. And then Grandpappy 77, will you be able to group or categorize encounters? Example, 3 encounters if my players go into a cave. So yes, at least over time. I'm having to caveat a lot of that with over time because of the approach that we're taking with the Encounter Builder Alpha. We are trying to get a minimum viable product together for people to start testing, the subscribers to start testing in Alpha. And so that is not going to be a feature complete step when that step, 0.1 happens. But the idea is we're going to iterate quickly over time through the alpha, paying attention very closely to the feedback that's coming from the alpha. And from there, that's what's going to kind of make this a feature complete product offering. And so the idea is, yes, you would be able to group those encounters at least eventually at some point before it is feature complete. Drop Bear Ate My Baby. Will the encounter builder work in the app? Not originally, no. Everything that's going on with alpha testing and all of that is happening with the website, at least initially, and we're going to see what the demand is for including that in some way in the mobile app. The hypothesis right now, until we start to see that demand, is that encounter building is nowhere near as important in the mobile app as character management would be. So our attention is being placed there. GK Smith LCW, does this new partnership on AL mean that DDB will finally be an approved rules source. Well, that's not related necessarily. Well, we'll say it's related to one of these other character validation things, and I'll go on and answer it. So we are, I imagine that once all that completes, that yes, that would be considered it, but I don't know the answer to that 100% yet. There are probably a variety of reasons that that's not considered that right now. And most of that is it just hasn't been everybody sitting down and saying this should be considered that official source. Gaius Octavian Alere, wait, my players can see details on the monsters in my encounters by default. Your players won't be able to get to your private encounters by default. No. What I'm saying is you can publicly share that encounter, and anybody, because anybody could be a dungeon master out there, anybody could go and look at that encounter and choose to incorporate that into his or her game. But no, your players will not be able to see your encounters. They won't have a way to go and see those encounters. Now, your players can create their own encounters, but they wouldn't be able to see anything that you're trying to keep secret. If I misspoke, that was completely unintentional. Aaron Lore, I have the subscription for my DM. Would they still have access to the alpha for encounter building? This is a very good question, and the answer is not at this time. No, we don't have a mechanism that we would be able to do that, but we are looking into the possibility as we continue to do this type of alpha testing in the future for there to be a way to do that. The Howell family, will D&D Beyond be populating encounters in hardcovers? And if so, will we be able to edit them in a campaign? Yes and yes. Sometimes the encounters are easier or harder than I'd like to see, and I'd like to switch them around. Yes, you will. First of all, if you buy a product on one of the hardcover content products on D&D Beyond, that content, that digital content, will include the encounters pre-populated, pre-made for you. And yes, you will be able to edit those encounters. Zekmorn J, will in the encounter builder be usable in an iPad mobile browser? Please don't do what you did to the character sheet for iPad users initially. Wow, that sounds like there was some really, foul intent with what we did to you all with the iPad, those iPad users with the character sheet. That's I take a little bit of umbrage to that. No, it will work in a browser just like it works in any browser. Any kind of responsive design, including the character sheet, by the way, any of that kind of responsive design is going to depend on the resolution of the browser that you're using. And sometimes there just isn't room for certain things. So yes, things have to shift around. I don't have as much room on my phone as I do on this giant screen that I'm looking at here. So things have to shift around. That is part of responsive and mobile design. But yes, the encounter builder, like anything we make, will be able to be used in any type of browser on any type of device. All right, let's see. Content management. So this is whitelisting, blacklisting. A lot of the initially this is going to be for sources. So we had been calling this source management for a long time. Those sources will be manageable. The primary use case that we're trying to get out there right now on this is that folks will not be able, if they're in a campaign and content sharing's on, they will not be able to go and read Dragon Heist ahead of time if that dungeon master does not want them to do so. And so they'll be able to manage that kind of blacklisting, that kind of whitelisting for sources. Additional login providers, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. We don't have any timelines on that yet, but we will provide Google and Facebook and some others as we go along this year. My character's campaign page updates. This is primarily what we demonstrated a few weeks ago with some of the character style changes. So the cards for the characters having more useful information, all of that, those visual changes will start to take place. But this also does include on my characters sorting and organizing the characters themselves, being able to find your characters. If someone out there has 16,000, almost 17,000 characters, then we want to give them a much better way to organize those characters. So that's what that would be. Interactive adventure maps, I just showed off a little bit of what that would be. But again, the idea is you can get back and forth between map and what's going on in the adventure very, very quickly. Character copy from others and public. So right now, on your own account, you can copy a character and then rename that character and change that character however you want to. We're going to allow this to happen so you could share your character publicly. Others could view your character and they could copy down a version of that character, very similar to what you'll see on Google Drive if you make a copy of a document. That is what's going to happen with characters. So this is also one of the reasons this is important, is this will be a mechanism for us to do pre-made characters. So in the Lost Mine of Phandelver, we will be able to supply the pre-generated characters. You will be able to view that character and pull down a character to your account where you can start customizing that character. AL character validation. First pass of that is going to be, player's handbook +1, point buy only, all of those very general rules to make sure that character creation is assisted and make sure that people aren't inadvertently, because I know no one out there would ever try to cheat in the AL, but that you don't inadvertently put into something that is illegal from an AL perspective. And so if that character is AL valid, you'll see a badge that shows up somewhere near the portrait, somewhere in that header area, that is going to demonstrate that, so a dungeon master can see at a glance. You show them your phone, you show them the character, that it is AL legal. Let's see if we got any questions. I'll stop for a second. Aggie Bear, I write AL one-shots. Will it be possible to create encounters in D&D Beyond and then include it in files sold on the DM's Guild? So first of all, there would be nothing at all stopping you from including links to encounters on D&D Beyond within any of those products that go on the DM's Guild. Nothing at all would stop anybody from doing that. People can do that today. If you create monsters for an adventure on the DM's Guild, you can include a link to that monster in the PDF for everything that's going on D&D Beyond. So there, yes, encounters that are shared publicly, you will be able to include those in anything, anywhere that you want to use that. FDR M. Frank, if I am a player and bought an adventure and my DM blacklisted it, would I be able to read it? Yes, that's a very good question. We are not going to prevent you from reading something that you have purchased. The source management, content management only goes so far. Very obviously, we would not say that you, in this case, FDR M. Frank, could not read the book that you purchased. That will never happen. Renderance play. It's a very good question, though. I do appreciate the clarity there. Renderance plays on the campaign pages. Will we be able to make a wiki-like experience for campaign management? So that is, that's definitely not part of this. If you see my mouse here, that is not part of what we're doing here, but it is something that you can see a little further down the planned list. That is campaign forums, wiki pages, some type of portal for your campaigns. We've seen a little bit of a theme start to emerge that people are wanting to see that. And that is what we are talking about when it comes to that. Mighty Samson, for content management, will you be able to share only certain parts of books? Example, the section on life in Waterdeep and Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Not initially, but that kind of finite whitelisting and blacklisting is on tap for further iterations of content management. All right, let me see. I'm only going through this upcoming. Monster Builder, I've talked a good bit about that in the past, but at the highest level, you're going to be able to take a monster from scratch. You can just start blank slate and create a monster from the ground up. It's going to calculate the challenge rating for you. It's going to, and all that's going to be based on the internal ticking math that powers all monster design for Wizards of the Coast. So all of that's going to happen based on what kinds of abilities, what kind of offensive output that they're doing and what kind of defensive capabilities they have. All of that special secret sauce is going to be coming together from that blank slate, and then you'll have a monster that is reasonably balanced when it comes to challenge rating. You can also go into existing creatures like a Mind Flayer, and you can take that Mind Flayer and say that you want to challenge a lower level group, that you don't want them to go against. I think it's a 12 maybe right now, a typical Mind Flayer challenge. You can take that and move that down to 5, and it'll just be a slider that you can move that down to 5, and all of the details and all of the math will just cascade and update based on a certain type of hierarchy and priority. You can take items and add it to the creature and equip them to the creature, and then that adds itself to the offensive or defensive output of that creature. And so that will affect challenge. So no more of this Mind Flayer that had the staff of the Magi lying on the desk because he wasn't actually using it. Like, you can equip that. You'll be able to also within that modify, you'll be able to take special qualities and special action types from other monsters and add them to other existing monsters pretty easily. Hopefully in a drag and drop method. We're not quite there yet with the design, but something that's very, very easy. So I can take that Mind Flayer and I can say that Mind Flayer, or let's say I can take a thug, and that thug has been experimented on by Mind Flayers for a long time. And so maybe that thug has the ability to do a Mind Blast once per day. You can apply that to the thug. Again, the challenge would update appropriately. So the monster builder, lots and lots of fun coming with that. See if we've got any questions. Let's see. The Squid Father, would interactive adventure maps involve pre-made encounters for the adventurers? How much extra work is this adding to the workload each time a new adventure comes out? So the first question is, yes, the idea is those pre-made encounters would be included on the interactive map for any of the existing or new products that come out, and it will add a good bit of work. Thanks a lot for considering our welfare and our well-being, but we are trying to provide that value for the content that we're putting out. And so, yeah, it will add a good bit of extra work, but that is something that we know will provide so much value that it is something that is worth it for us. The Howl family, if we as the DM do not allow a player in a campaign access to a hardcover adventure with source management, will we still be able to drop in specialized magic items into that character's inventory? One of my players was lucky enough to get Azure Edge, and I'd like them to see the item stats, but I wouldn't want to share all of Dragon Heist with them. So yes, initially with content management, you will be able to restrict the compendium access to that content so they couldn't read about everything that's going on. That's going to have no bearing whatsoever on magic items. They'll still be able to drop those in. Over time, you'd be able to restrict those magic items if you desired to do so, but you still could unrestrict that magic item and give that to that player when that time comes. Kale McDonald, what features are currently planned for the digital DM screen? Is this something we can attach rule snippets and links to so DMs can quickly reference things they specifically need, or will this be a general set of reference info? So yeah, getting down to that, I'll just go ahead and jump down there because, to be honest, I've talked about the others a good bit in recent weeks. The digital DM screen, where we'll wrap up this part of our time today. The digital DM screen, even as that is talked about internally, we see that there are two different ways that we're focusing on, two different paths for what people even think this is. And so the good news is we intend to cover both types of functionality, but it depends on which one we come out with first, based on what we think the community needs the most. But yes, there is one path that is very centered around snippets of rules, tables that you might care about, information very similar to any DM screen that you're going to see that, I have no idea how the focus is going to go on backup camera 1 here. But, all this kind of information is going to be essentially the kind of thing that you're going to see. But you'll be able to take that and hopefully drag and drop that around. You'll be able to customize what's going on there. That's definitely the idea for one of those paths. The other path is going to be where people are looking for the ability to run combat, having all your players' stats and information easily available, having the monsters and the things that are challenging those players easily available, the encounters, all of that. So that is a little closer to what we've been calling combat tracking and management. But all of those types of functionality will be covered at least over time. But the digital DM screen itself, we've been looking a little bit more towards the rules snippets and being able to customize what you might want to see on an easily accessible single page. Now, if we get there and we see that you would be able to add some of the combat tracking and management in that place where you can just look at it, if you have a big enough screen, again, this is going to be really challenging on a phone, but if you have a big enough screen and you're using a laptop at the table or whatever, then I imagine we would allow that. The idea is to allow that to be customizable enough that you can mix and match those elements to come together. We'll see a little bit more when we get there, but that is the intent and the idea. All right. Any last questions on any of that? Looks like maybe no. So, all right. We'll move on into looking into some updates on data for races and classes. So again, it was April when we looked at this last. Hopefully this is going to be something that you can see. I tried to get as many of the names as I could in here, so I know that that's probably going to be a little bit tiny. You might need to full screen for just a second. If you can't see what's going on here, I'll talk through this. So I did this by SUBRACE because people have really had a lot of questions about that part of it. So we went ahead and went down to the lowest common denominator that we could there. And so we've got humans and variant humans are very, very popular. And surprisingly, the normal human amongst active characters is still the most chosen, barely. So there have to be some games out there, I imagine, that do not allow feats, for instance, or whatever. But humans, either way you slice it, are taking up 22% of the distribution going on with races themselves. So people like to play humans. This has always and forever been the case. In the 40 plus years of Dungeons and Dragons, it is something that people can relate to. And, it makes sense to me that you might want to minimize the variables as you're doing a game like Dungeons and Dragons. So maybe it's already fantastical enough that you can be a paladin that can smite her enemies with divine might. Maybe that's fantastical enough, and you don't also have to be a bugbear on top of that. So humans, always the most played, all of that. So let's see. Half elf is next highest. Tiefling, dragonborn, and then we start getting into a couple of the elves. So we have wood elves and high elves. So wood elves are played more than high elves. Half orc, there's one of my favorites right there representing. Goliaths, mountain dwarves are in there. Lightfoot halflings squeeze in between the other hill dwarf. We've got Aasimar in here, the variant Aasimar. That could be somewhat based on availability because the Dungeon Master's Guide, of course, has made that available since the beginning. Aarakocra, the Eladrin variant that's also available in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then Rock Gnome Changeling here is the first of the Eberron races representing here. So changelings have become very popular. A lot of these other races are, hovering around like that 0.8 percentage. So we're cutting off at Deep Gnome here, but a lot of the other races start to flatten out at that point in time. So this is where we find ourselves currently with active played characters. And again, the way that we try to figure that out is, have hit points been adjusted? Have they had level up after the initial creation? So somebody might go create a level 15 character, and then they might level that up to 16 and 17 at some point in the future. But we anticipate and hypothesize the amount of people that do that are relatively small. It is more likely that someone that is just theory crafting is going to go, and just make a level 20 character or whatever. So this is not going to ever be foolproof. It's a lot better than we've had, in the game in previous editions, but it's not going to be foolproof. So I know that we've got a lot of statisticians out there that are raising their glasses and are going to want to dig in on this. We're never going to be able to get it to where we can make 100% firm conclusions, but this is quite a bit better than we've been able to have in the past, and a peek into what is popular, what are people playing. So this is SUBRACEs. Class distribution. So as always, the fighter is there. Interestingly enough, the last time that we looked at this, I was very surprised that the warlock had crept up into the 4th place role here above the wizard. So, and that would be the first time that had ever really happened, because in the game, if you guys know any of your D&D history, we have always, they might have been called something slightly different, but we've always had a fighter, rogue, cleric, and wizard. And so those are typically going to be the highest distribution. We see that at this point in time, with millions and millions of characters, that has started to kind of, return to normal here a little bit. I think those warlocks got really, really popular when Xanathar's Guide to Everything came out, maybe because of a certain subclass. So fighter, rogue, cleric, wizard is what I would expect to see here. Ranger is more has more popularity than I feel like a lot of people in the community feel like it should. So draw your own conclusions from that. Barbarian, warlock, all these are very, very close, by the way. The ranger and the barbarian, more or less at the same place. Ranger barely edging it out. Warlock is barely behind those two. So warlock, in another couple of months, some kind of new thing happens with warlocks, might be back into a 3rd or 4th spot. But at this point in time, this is what we're seeing with a very large sample size. Paladin, bard, sorcerer, monk, druid. So that's what we see for classes. So there's a question kind of how many characters total in existence? We're somewhere like, let me look real quick actually. If we've hit 9 million or not. Let's see. Yeah, 8.8 million is where we are right now. So yeah, 8.8 million characters. Lots and lots of characters. All right, so let's look at subclass distribution. So the top subclasses are the life domain. Lots of life domain clerics out there. The draconic bloodline and the fiend. And those are actually pretty strongly in the lead there. So again, you could infer a lot of things about this. None of these inferences are going to be 100%, but you could say that life domain is a pretty strong build for a cleric. It is really, really strong. You could say that it is freely available as per the SRD. That absolutely could have something to do with this. It's a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing. Maybe it's available via the SRD or the basic rules because it's so good. So either way, you can start to dig into a little bit of this and form some opinions. Draconic bloodline, sorcerers, even them being one of the least popular overall, this bloodline is this ancestry is the second most popular subclass. And so I might infer from that that, if you're going to play a sorcerer, you should be a brass draconic bloodline, because they're the best. But the draconic bloodline is a very strong subclass for sorcerers, as is the fiend. You can have your fancy hex blades, but the fiend is still really, really strong. It's got excellent spell selection, and it's got this whole Dark One's Blessing thing. And then, is there any other 14th level ability out there that is, hurl through hell? I don't think anybody has anything like that. So the fiend is a very strong subclass, and so you see it well represented here as well. The champion fighter, a lot of people just really disagree with that, but the champion fighter is very popular. People find the passivity of that subclass very appealing, and those passives are pretty strong. Hunter, thief, College of Lore. It's the only way to bard. College of Lore. Path of the Berserker, School of Evocation. So again, here's the Hexblade. So the Hexblade, when we looked at this, I guess back in April, I can't remember if it was April or a little bit later than that for the subclasses, but the last time we looked, Hexblade was the top played subclass. That is no longer the case. So we could potentially infer a little bit of flavor of the month, or maybe people just really, really wanted to try it out, and then they resumed their normal activities with their other characters. So, maybe deleted their Hexblade. So this is the data that we're seeing for subclass distribution. Again, not foolproof, but it is fascinating to look at, because this is a little bit more information than we really ever had on this. Hope you guys enjoyed that update on classes and races. Let's see, do we have any other questions? So Logos Works. Would it ever be possible to see this same chart, but with each segment being colored, to see users with paid content? For example, of the 10% life clerics, X% of them are free users. We could look at that. I can tell you that we have internally looked at that, and it doesn't alter this dramatically really at all. So for instance, even if we put paid versus unpaid here, life domain is still going to be hugely represented. So, but it is a very good question, and it is something that we could potentially look at in the future. Doing just, the paid thing, we certainly would want to do that as a comparison, because if we didn't do it as a comparison, I don't think it would be giving the full picture enough. But we could potentially show that as a comparison. Again, either way, life domain is going to be really, really strong, even for people that are paying for content. Mirari 15, will we ever see charts like these with homebrew or with new books once they come out? I'm not sure what you mean by the second part of the question. New books once they come out, because we do incorporate that, and we do sometimes. We have looked at, for instance, a few weeks ago, we looked at which races were most popular for Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. So we will continue to do that for new books. But homebrew, I would like to maybe hear what you guys would find interesting about homebrew. We can't dig into a ton of detail about some of the homebrew, because we don't necessarily, that content's not intended for that. So we don't want to really use it for purposes that people didn't intend it. But if we're talking about, how many spells versus magic items are being created, we absolutely could incorporate that at some point. So if you have other ideas about what you'd like to see with homebrew, by all means, share that on Twitter, Discord, the forums, wherever you find D&D Beyond, and we'll see what we can do about that. All right, let's see. I've got 10 minutes left. Let's see what else there is. So Q&A section. I said I was going to do some of my favorite things here too. I'm going to be brief with this because we only have 10 minutes left. I have already answered a pretty good bit of questions, but I wanted to talk through, I get these questions all the time. So, which is my favorite race? There you go. I love half orcs. So half orcs are my favorite race. We'll go on and say that Adam's favorite is half orcs. I'm not exactly sure how to put a finger on why I like half orcs so much, but I do. And I wouldn't necessarily consider myself just a, oafish brute in real life, but I really, really do like half orcs. I don't mind playing against the stereotype with a half orc too. I also really, really like hobgoblins. So I'm a big fan of hobgoblins. I think that the lore surrounding hobgoblins is fascinating, and I think that hobgoblins are underutilized. So classes, what is my favorite class? My favorite class is the tough, strong fighter. It is just so flexible. I do a little bit of amateur archery, and so I can play a fighter that is, in my opinion, the best archer in the game. Feats are just king. And so I love the flexibility that I can play dynamite archer. I can play a very tanky kind of character like Briv Steel Marrow, or I can play a fighter that is, again, just the passive abilities of a champion. I'm not having to put a lot of active thought into what's going on there, and I can focus a little bit more on role playing. So, fighter is my favorite class. I would say that that is followed by the bard. Love bards. And then I would say that outside of that, it's probably getting to be a cleric. I also like monks quite a bit. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I'm not sure if I've shared that before, but I really enjoy studying martial arts. And so I like monks. I just don't like them mechanically quite as much as I wish I did. So I don't play them as much. All right. This was another question that I get outside of the player's handbook. What is my favorite player focused product that has kind of come out to this point? And I don't know if there is an answer outside of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This is a very, very strong product. It's been incredible. I can't wait to see, something else like this in the future. I'm hoping that, Wizards, because there's a lot of work that goes into this kind of product, but Xanathar's Guide to Everything is the summit of that for me. Favorite adventure. This is a really good question that I get all the time, and this is going to surprise a good bit of you, but I have a special place in my heart for the Horde of the Dragon Queen into Rise of Tiamat, that entire campaign. So I guess they called it Reign of Dragons or Tyranny of Dragons. Tyranny of Dragons. I actually am a pretty big fan of that. Not necessarily. I probably could see that from just the book execution itself, that maybe they're not as strong as some of the other products that have come, especially recently, like Dragon Heist or Storm King's Thunder. I like the backdrop. I like the classic go against the the five-headed Queen of Dragons. And so I'm going to make a campaign my own and my table zone anyway. And so I really like the backdrop, and that would be it. Also get this question a good bit. Official, what is my favorite spell? Minor illusion. What is my favorite magic item? I am a fan of a Vorpal sword. I like Lewis Carroll. What is my favorite monster? I think that's pretty obvious that it's a beholder. Probably followed very closely by a brass dragon, but I don't see a brass dragon as a monster. It's my friend. So yeah, that's a few of my favorite things, since I get questions about that all the time, and we typically don't answer them on the stream. Now, I'm going to try for 5 minutes to squeeze in as many other questions as I possibly can, but I'm going to do this while I'm going to answer these with questions. So we're going to see how I do with this. All right. So, AK318, are gift cards vouchers still being looked into, as they seem to be absent from the roadmap? Is it still looking to be developed in the future? Are you aware that there are several items that are on the way, but they are not covered in the roadmap? If you're aware of that, then you know the answer to that. So yes, they are coming. I'm sure I'm getting buzzed at this point by Drew Carey. But Yes, gift cards are coming. Daniel Gonzalez, could we have a combat tracker integrated into our adventure books? The adventure would check the adventures listed in our campaign and generate the combat tracker with stats and health for both them and the monsters in that encounter. Are you aware of our feature roadmap that is available at dndbeyond.com/feature-roadmap? If you are aware of that, I feel like you're going to have the answer to that question, that yes, a combat tracker is going to be available at some point in the future. Storm Rider, is there any thought to reworking the share-enabled campaign player slots for master tier subscribers? I have a mix of various tables with 3 or 4 players and an open table/AL campaign with more than 20 participants, and I'd love to get them all on DDB. Limiting the slots and sharing is fine, but it would be nice to spread those slots the way I want. Are you able to wait for a few months while we get that in place? This is really hard. A little bit easier to tell a story, like, Wayne Brady and all these people. All right, so Cart Crew. Hey there, are there plans to add full homebrew classes rather than just subclasses this year? Have you seen some of the recent development updates where I have talked about and confirmed that yes, they are coming at some point in the future? Drollheim, any news on having a cooperative inventory for parties? Example being a bag of holding so that everyone has access to it. Are you aware of our feature request portal that is available at dndbeyond.com/feature-request, where I have seen this request get quite a bit of votes? And are you aware that we have recently confirmed that we are going to have things like party shared inventory? I'm going to try to answer this last one without an "are you aware?" because I don't know what else. I don't know how else to make these questions. I don't know who came up with this idea. All right. Cat Jack, will you be adding a text-based communication capability for the DM and players to communicate through the app? That way, players and DM wouldn't have to get up from the table for whispers or use of telepathy within the group. Forget it. I don't know how to do this one question. Yes, we would love to do something like this in the future. I am sure that as we get to a point where we are starting to see some of these elements come together, especially as we start taking steps into some kind of virtual related game space, when that starts happening, communication is going to be key, and figuring out how we can allow players to communicate to dungeon masters is going to be very, very important. And so we will see that at that point in time. It looks like we are out of time. I appreciate everyone joining us so early in the morning on the West Coast, so late in the evening if you're on the other side of the world. Really do appreciate it. Thanks again. If you have any questions in the meantime that I wasn't able to get to, you can hit me up on Twitter at BadEyeAdam. I do my best to go through and answer those. I might have a little bit of a backlog out there right now because I've been traveling this week, but I'll try to get back to those as soon as I can. Please ask those questions. We will see you guys next week. Thanks again.